Welcome to the Tesla Economist. Please hit the thumbs up and remember to subscribe. You can also follow me on Twitter and talk to me on Patreon. To summarize what we've been discussing, it could be possible that new car prices will rise significantly due to supply dwindling of ICE cars because of demand transitioning from ICE to electric, and also the potential issues with chips. This will affect economies of scale for legacy autos, and they may never recover. So they'll have to raise the prices of the models they can sell, and due to supply being lower, then the market will accept higher prices. This will in effect reduce demand to meet the now smaller supply. The market will eventually find its clearing price. Of course, a lot of consumers will simply want to opt for a Tesla due to the fact that their prices would not have risen as excessively, but instead their waiting list has grown considerably. And if you want a used Tesla, then they'll cost more than a new one. In fact, a lot of other used cars might also start appreciating too. Some car dealers are even offering to car owners to buy their cars for more than what the consumer paid for them a year ago when new, as they need the inventory. This is what inflation looks like. Too many dollars chasing too few goods, which is exactly what's happening. Yet at the same time, or at least within time, consumers are realizing that there is no point dropping considerable money on a new ICE car either, as the future is clearly electric, especially if said ICE cars are becoming more expensive. But as we've determined, there is not sufficient supply of electric vehicles yet. So what do consumers do? They join the waiting list for a new Tesla, or possibly even a new electric legacy vehicle if the waiting list is shorter, which it may not be, and the legacy auto will be inferior too. Yeah, I'm still not sure about legacy. They'll have much less supply, but yet they'll also be more expensive than a Tesla. So I don't know if their waiting list will be longer or shorter. However, car dealers will possibly have already bought some electric vehicles wholesale from the manufacturers, and are able to sell them to you today, but might be charging even as high as a $20,000 premium, or even more. Perhaps I'm way off here. Remember though, there is likely a $12,500 tax credit too. Anyway, aggregate demand for new legacy autos will be down a lot due to these price hikes. The car dealers will also have minimal supply, but possibly be able to stay in business due to these excessive markups on the vehicles they have now. However, I think it highly likely the logical consumer behavior will be to hold onto your existing car that much longer, until perhaps Tesla has scaled up enough to relieve this supply issue. It won't be relieved by anyone else. The legacy companies can't do it. None of the new EV startups like Lucid or Rivian can scale that fast either, as they have so far to go still. The Chinese will have a huge disadvantage to flood the US market and other markets because governments will intervene with protectionism, adding tariffs to Chinese imports and subsidizing local manufacturing. Not to mention the lack of infrastructure the Chinese EVs will have in the US, particularly in the way of service centers. Not only that, I think it unlikely that the Chinese will adopt Tesla's FSD. The Chinese may not trust American technology as much and would rather use the inferior Chinese FSD instead. Americans will not want that, and they will want Tesla FSD, and it's likely that every single legacy company was at least smart enough to adopt Tesla's FSD, as autonomous driving will eventually be mandatory in a consumer's purchasing decision for a new car. Legacy will inevitably be using Tesla's charging network anyway, so the adoption to Tesla FSD isn't too much a big step for them at this stage. So car dealers will be lacking supply, and likely some will even close down. Adam Smith's invisible hand will dictate the supply and demand of necessary car dealers. However, I foresee that their servicing and parts side of the business may flourish, at least for a few years, whilst we're suffering the supply issue and inflationary car period. As people are holding on to their current cars for longer, then they will require more maintenance and upkeep, so the servicing and parts side of the business will probably grow, as consumers can't afford to replace their current car. This will also benefit the legacy autos parts business. Also, the used car market would likely remain fairly strong during this period. However, when Tesla finally are able to ramp up enough, well, then there'll be a big backlog of orders. So it will take a while until there is enough supply. Even if Tesla are at 5 million units in the US by 2025, then that simply won't be close to enough. The legacy autos may also have achieved 1 million EV units a year by that stage too, which also won't be enough. But you know what will help? Yes, you've probably guessed it. Robotaxis. You can get perhaps 10 times more use from a robotaxi compared to a privately used vehicle. Therefore, 1/10 the number of cars are required for the same amount of transport, but we're not there yet. In the meantime, most drivers will be doing what they can to economize their existing car. Perhaps couples reduce from 2 cars to just 1, And eventually the price of ICE cars will drop as they become too expensive and inconvenient, and perhaps public transport starts to look like a better option, or even biking to work maybe. Right, perhaps the electric bike industry would benefit well from this inflationary period, and it should just be a temporary period until the EV automakers find out just what the real market supply is, especially when robotaxis have fully proliferated through the country. Wow, the timing of robotaxis could be unbelievable, but temporarily this could last several years still. Buying a car will not be what it once was. Of course, if Tesla launched a $25,000 compact at this time, can you just imagine what the demand would be like? Added to that with a $10,000 tax credit, yeah, the waiting list will be backed up for years and years. I keep saying that a Model 2 factory will likely do at least 5 million units a year, but possibly more. Remember, if a lot of people have not bought a new car over the last few years, then this is pent-up demand that will last for a significant period of time. But not only that, the demand for a cheap electric car as well, the fact that everyone is going to want to transition, I joke you not, but Tesla would probably have enough demand to sell over 100 million Model 2s in the first year, especially if there is a tax incentive. That is beyond absurd, but totally true if you think about it, and if you have full autonomy. But Tesla might want the first few batches or so for themselves, to fill their robotaxi network with their own fleet. Why sell something for $25,000 when it could bring you more income than that every year? It's not good business acumen. Anyway, as some of you know, I actually do not own a Tesla, and I'm very glad I didn't buy one too, as it is money I use to invest in Tesla instead. But you know what? My research and videos are starting to convince me too, and me making these videos has actually convinced me to buy a new Tesla. Okay, I actually have a deposit on a Plaid, and I'm literally number one in my entire country on the waiting list for it, except that wait isn't until the end of next year, if I'm lucky. So in the meantime, I think I'm going to purchase a Model 3 standard range. I did the numbers too. If I sold my existing car, which happens to be a Mercedes E500 in case you were wondering, and if I use the sale of that as a deposit, then the Tesla costs me about US $300 a month on finance over 5 years. However, that's about how much I spend on fuel anyway, and after 5 years, then those payments also stop. Also, buying it on finance means it doesn't absorb my capital for investing in Tesla. Translation, I basically get a free Tesla. Of course, I still want my Plaid as well, and hopefully the stock price has risen significantly higher by then too. Not that I would sell any shares to buy the car, but it's always reassuring to have that to fall back on. Thanks for listening. Please hit the thumbs up and subscribe. You can follow me on Twitter and talk to me on Patreon.